now take you to the broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here's Reverend Martin.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Some of you, good night. And Merry Christmas above all things. I'm Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin, and the name of our program, It's Time. And the theme for this particular program is It's Time to Push Back. Let us read our marching orders, which are found in James chapter 5, verse 4. It says simply, "Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which of you is kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered in the ears of the Lord Sabaoth." And my brothers and my sisters, we are in those times when we're being defrauded. Every working man, every working woman, every businessman, every businesswoman who is not in that upper 1%, we are now being cheated royally by this new so-called tax reform, which is a transfer of our wealth, meager though it is, up to that 1% who have done little or nothing. It brings to mind what Abe Lincoln was saying when he said, "You work and earn bread and I'll eat it." This is where we are in our nation as a people. We are being cheated and defrauded, and it's legal. If that doesn't make us rise up, I don't know what will. It is time for us to cry out with all wage earners, to cry out with all people of goodwill around this great nation, for we're getting taxed without representation. And that's nothing new here in America. As a fact, I think there was a revolution fought over that very thing. Now, I'm sure that those in power, the status quo, are going to do everything as far as public relations and photo ops are concerned to make this, to put a lipstick on this pig. But believe me, it's a pig. We're being deprived of wealth. And one of the ways they put a poison pill in it is all of the effect doesn't come about at once. It's going to be spread out over 10 years. So you think you're getting ahead, you think you're getting a benefit until those benefits hit their sundown limit and are taken away. And after that, then the middle class, which is already quite decimated and emaciated in this United States of America, I'm sure will cease to be, if it has not already. Because I don't know where you are when you see this audio clip or broadcast. Thank God for YouTube and Facebook. Even in spite of net neutrality, we're able to get something out there. But here in Los Angeles County, we have people sleeping under the bridges. We have people sleeping on the sidewalk. We have people who once had good jobs who are now sleeping and living out of their automobiles, living in RVs, doing the best they can. And yet the society, the city, the state, and the county of LA are constantly passing new ordinances, new rules that are telling the people who are barely trying to hold on by their fingernails. You know, some of us are still working, but have nowhere viable to live because we couldn't afford the rent, but we can afford to go to work every day, which says a lot about this economic system, that you can work on a job and yet not have enough money to meet your rent and your other obligation. And this type of behavior by our government against us has got to be put on blast, because we as a people of this United States of America must realize that we're all in this together. And we as a people must all rise up and speak out and demonstrate against these injustices. Remember, for a long time, slavery, even though it was an injustice and even though it was wrong, was legal. And these tax reforms that they're passing are no better than slavery because they're taking your wealth away from you, and you won't have it. Someone else will have your hard-earned labor. The richest 1% of this country. I believe another statistic said that there are 38 richest people in the world who have more wealth than 50% of the population of the United States of America. Isn't that about nothing? So if that doesn't get you going, you're going to have to be stirred up some other kind of way. I don't like being broke. I don't like being ripped off. I don't like people taking what's mine away from me, especially when they do it as this Congress of the United States is doing it, with the gavel and with much fanfare and with much photo op, as though they are just shouting a dervish, a devilish dervish, around the bonfires of the devil. And we as a church, we as people of goodwill, whether you're in church or not, cannot stand idly by and watch our people be destroyed economically. Because if you get destroyed economically in this capitalistic system, you are literally destroyed, because you need income. And to have income, most of us have to have a job. And those of us that may not have a job, we still have to have some type of a business where we can earn an honest living. None of us wants to become criminal or a thief. We all want to earn have an honest income. And God knows it's been getting worse and worse. I was talking with a friend of mine just this week about the fact that my father was able to raise us on $1 an hour. But what could you buy with $1 an hour in this economy? $8 a day won't cut it. You just can't buy a Big Mac and get you a Happy Meal at McDonald's with $8. You might get some change back. That's what $8 will get you in America right now. Things have really deteriorated, and it's not only something that should infuriate you, but it should create some anxiety for what are we going to have to pass on to our children and to our grandchildren going forward as we allow this injustice to take root. We must push back. We must root it out. We got to vote them out, and we got to run new people that will make a commitment before we endorse them, that when they get to Washington and get in that seat, they will get busy like Donald Trump said he was going to get busy, and roll back this tax so-called reform that we are laboring under. We don't want to spend all of our time on the tax reform issue, but it certainly needs to be brought before us, and we should not forget it, how that our congressional representatives in the House of Representatives and in the Senate have conspired against we, the people. And the Democrats say that their hands are not on the table, but you never know. Because they have sold us out before. But hopefully this time they're actually legit and genuine, that they genuinely did not want this type of a tax reform to pass. I hate to have doubt about our Democratic brothers and sisters in the Congress, but they've let us down before, and they've betrayed us before. If there's one thing that we know, is that we don't owe the Democratic Party anything. If you search history, search the historical record. And we need to hold our elected politicians accountable and make them answerable and make them liable to be not only recalled but voted out of their term of office for failure to do their job, to do their duty in a timely manner when they could have spoken out. I don't know about you, but I get endless emails from the DSCC asking me to send money every week, every day. And what do we get for the money that we send? And these type of things claim our attention, and we need to make inquiry as to what are we getting for our bucks and what are we getting for our votes that we are expending upon these plutocrats in Washington, D.C. Oh, I know they know our hymns and they know how to come to our churches to get our votes, but what are they doing for us? For that matter, what are our local politicians that are the closest to us doing for us at this time? We need to ask those questions, and we need to demand that our politicians that we voted for, that told us that they were our servants, that they would represent us when they got in office, we need to ask them, what have you done for me lately? And we cannot accept their rhetoric. We need to see the evidence. It needs to be evidence-based and factually asserted and shown that they're doing something to benefit we, the people. Remember, the purpose of a democracy, the cornerstone of the democracy is just that word, demos. The power is in, or rests with the people. That means you, that means me, that means all of us. Unfortunately, we know that since the Supreme Court of the United States under Chief Justice Roberts okayed that Citizens United and some other rulings that they have made since then, we have a situation where you have these fictitious persons, which is these corporations have been given the benefits of the 14th Amendment without having to be a actual living, breathing human being. Actually, they get benefits out of the 13th, but that's a story for another day. But they definitely are being treated better, the corporations, than the real, actual human beings for whom that 14th Amendment was originally codified to help and to benefit, so that entities that are what you call fictional, what the Bible says, you have a name that thou livest but are dead, that these fictional entities have more power than the actual human person, which is me and usted. And we must not only be conscious of that, but the billions of dollars that are being poured into our Congress are literally undermining our democracy right here in these here United States of America, because corporate greed has no bounds. The Bible rightly characterizes them as beasts because they're amorphous. While you try to call to take care of some business over the phone, you speak into a void. You get answered by a robot, or by a computer-generated message. They tell you how valuable your call is, but where's the person? About the 30th time, they tell you your call is valuable, but you ain't heard from nobody picked up that phone yet. And to add insult to injury, sometimes while you're pressing 1 or pressing 2 or pressing 5, you get disconnected. And you have to start all over to try to get through to talk to someone about your grievance and about your issue. the Bible very, very aptly calls them beasts, for beast is what they are. They have no feeling, they have no emotion, they have no compassion because they don't exist as you and I exist. But they are grinding us up as the poor, as the Bible says. They're literally grinding up the poor. They're trying to do away with us, folks. They're trying to wipe out our little feeble middle class. You know, we didn't get voting rights for the Negro until 1965, and ever since then, there's been a constant pushback, a constant exertion, trying to undermine the meager gains that we have made. And now we find that not only is it the blacks who are being pushed back and attempting to be held down, but now they're pushing the whites out. The white people are losing jobs. The white people are losing income. The white folks are likewise losing their home. So it's all of us as poor, we stand together and we can overcome this onslaught. We've got to push back against it, and we got to find or generate or identify methods and ways to push back. They have every avenue seemingly covered, whether it's paper goods or whether it's entertainment or whether it's services. We are dependent upon this beast for our very survival. And believe me, they are finding ways right now to help us not to survive. As an old blues singer said, you got some help you don't need. That is something that we cannot afford to allow to continue. So I'm giving out this call, this challenge. It's time. And it's time to rebel. It's time for a revolution. It's time to say enough is enough and to begin a giant pushback in all 50 states. Look at how they've treated poor Puerto Rico. Even though it's a territory, it's still a part of the United States of America. And look how Puerto Rico is being treated by this government. And what they're doing to Puerto Rico is the same thing that they're doing to the entire country, to the entire economy. They're ripping us all off, folks. And this is not going to make for a very Merry Christmas. But I don't want to spend all the time on such dire and dark consideration. I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and I want to call your attention to the fact that in the 1800s, even during slavery, that we celebrated Christmas. We celebrated Christmas. Not like the other folks celebrated Christmas, but we celebrated Christmas because we were grateful for the Christ child. We were grateful for Jesus. And we embrace the faith, and we embrace the belief, and we were able over the time to, as they say, eat the watermelon and spit out the seeds, to separate truth from fiction, and to arrive at a wholesome faith, to arrive at the true truth of Jesus. Not mere Christianity, not mere churchianity, but the truth of Jesus. And I know there's a lot of dispute and pushback, as well as should be in academic and scholarly quarters, but this matter is taken on faith. And it's a beautiful thing at this time of the year for the families to come together and wish each other well, and co-workers at work wish each other well. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful custom. Regardless of when Jesus was born, that has nothing to do with our celebration of Christmas. The fact that Jesus was born is the important thing. And while I'm on that, the December 25th date was simply politically driven. Some of those ancient Roman emperors settled on a date, and then we find that the early church, not the early church as in Paul and Silas and those days, because they didn't celebrate Christmas. But after 300, we find that there began to develop a custom of attempting to honor Jesus' birth. And as I said, one doesn't have to know when Jesus was born. One only has to know that he was born and that he came into this world. He existed and that he still lives. One of the beautiful things I was looking at was a reminiscent or memory by the late Booker T. Washington on Christmas in Virginia. And he talks about the fact that Christmas for them lasted a week. And what they would do, according to Booker T. Washington, who was born a slave, mind you, and but died a free man, is that the slaves were given more or less a week off during the Christmas. Christmas was more than just one day. It went from Christmas on to New Year's. And one of the customs that they had was the custom of the Yule log. Now, the Yule log, smart slave would go out in the woods and find a thick green oak tree, and they would cut that tree, make a big log that would fit in the slave master's fireplace. But what they would do, you take that log and soak it in water and leave it in water all year long. Custom was, as when you lit that log in the slave master's fire, as long as that log burned and didn't fall in two, then you could celebrate Christmas. And so naturally, a smart slave would try to make that log burn as long as he could, make it last a week, all the way from Christmas Day through New Year's, because that means you didn't have to work, and you could celebrate. Slaves who had been not sold off, but rented out to neighboring plantations to work, and the families hadn't seen them all year, then they were allowed, most of them, the old slave master would give them passes so they could go back and see their parents, go back and see their brothers and their sisters that they had not seen probably all year long. And that was one of the joys in the slave quarters for Christmas. Big old family reunion. That was when a lot of the weddings took place around Christmas time, because the rest of the year, everybody was working out on the plantation, trying to make the slave master rich, but not getting anything for themselves. Now, some say that during this time on Christmas Day, whatever money some of the slaves had been able to kind of earn from doing things on the side, raising crops and selling them for their own, they were allowed to keep that money. And with that money, they were able to maybe buy something for the kids. Don't get it twisted, it wasn't much, but they were able to do a little something. And Booker T. Washington reflects on Christmas back in Virginia, how that even the slaves would put their stockings in the room for the slave master and slave mistress. So they put a little something in there, fruit or something for Christmas Day. And so, regardless of how rough or tough life was, people still celebrated. And I trust that you too will be able to celebrate and have a merry, powerful, productive, joyous Christmas. One other thing I need to say, a lot of us that are getting old, hey, I'm 70, and a lot of people that used to be with me are not with me now. And I imagine it's that way for a lot of people. A lot of people feel depression at this time of year. I want to encourage you to hold on. Don't let this time of the year bring you down as you remember the good times, remember the faces of the people that you once shared Christmas with, probably, and that are not there now. But God is there, and God will continue to encourage you and see you through. Remember, don't let it get you down. Push back, fight back, press on, because this race is not a sprint. Somebody says it's a marathon. Well, I know it's a long race, and you got to stay in it to win it. Not like our politicians. This race, you've got to win. If Booker T. Washington could do it, if the old slaves could do it, you could do it. If they could hold on with all that was upon them, you too can hold on. If they could press on with all the burden that they had pressing down upon them, you too can press on. Hey, Donald Trump is just one man, and he won't be there forever. And these policies that he's putting forward, remember, when Jesus was born, he and his mother and his father Joseph, Jesus was in the womb, of course, had to go to Bethlehem to do what? Pay taxes. And so these things are unjust, but they're nothing new. And don't give up the fight. Don't quit. Keep pushing. Keep pressing. Be encouraged. And Merry, Merry Christmas. Next week, we're going to talk about New Year's Day. God bless you and may God keep you is our prayer.